Episode 1: The Mirror House. In the quiet outskirts of Maine, deep within a forest of crimson maple trees, stood an old house the locals whispered about, a place they called the Mirror House. It had been abandoned for more than 30 years before a new family moved in: Mark, Evelyn, and their 8-year-old daughter, Lily. They came seeking peace, a new beginning, far from the noise and struggle of the city. At first, the house seemed peaceful, sunlight pouring through dusty windows, the air filled with the smell of pine. But as the days passed, something about the place began to feel wrong, and it was Lily who noticed first. "Daddy," she said one morning, her small voice trembling, "the girl in my mirror isn't me." Mark laughed, thinking it was just her imagination, but Lily insisted. The girl looked exactly like her, same face, same hair, except for the eyes. Those eyes were pitch black, like holes leading into nothing. That night, Evelyn was cleaning when she realized something strange. Every room in the house had at least one mirror. Some were mounted on walls, some tucked inside closets, others hidden behind furniture. All were old, with cracked edges and warped reflections. As she walked past the mirror in the hallway, she froze. Her reflection didn't turn its head. Evelyn stood still, staring at her double. Then, slowly, the reflection's lips began to move, whispering something she couldn't quite hear. She leaned closer, and through the cold glass came a faint voice, almost like a breath. "Get out." Mark, ever the skeptic, decided to take action. He removed every mirror in the house and locked them in the basement. But the next morning, they were all back, each one in the exact same place. The more he tried to remove them, the more they appeared. By the 4th day, the walls of the hallway reflected endless versions of himself, dozens of Marks staring back, and among them, one was smiling. But Mark wasn't. 3 nights later, Lily vanished. Evelyn found her bedroom door wide open, the curtains fluttering in the cold wind. In the center of the room stood the same mirror they had locked away. On its surface were small handprints, and behind the glass, Lily stood smiling, waving gently. Evelyn screamed and struck the mirror, shattering it into pieces. But in every shard, she still saw her daughter, distorted, terrified, silently mouthing for help. Desperate, Evelyn tried to piece the mirror back together. When the final shard clicked into place, Lily was gone. Only Evelyn's reflection remained, pale, hollow-eyed. Then, the reflection smiled, a crooked, unnatural smile, one that wasn't hers. A week later, police arrived after receiving a letter begging for help, sent from that very address. The house was empty, windows sealed shut. In the center of the living room stood a massive mirror. Inside, they saw 3 people, a man, a woman, and a little girl, all standing side by side, smiling. But when the officer turned around, the room behind him was completely empty. Months passed. The property was listed for sale again. A new family bought it, enchanted by what the realtor called a stunning antique mirror in the living room. Their young daughter, around 8 years old, ran up to the glass, giggling. Then she looked up at her mother and whispered, "Mommy, the girl in the mirror says she's been waiting here for a long, long time." Episode 2: The Last Radio Broadcast. In 1998, on the outskirts of Chicago, there was an old radio station called WNRC 103.6, The Night Voice. It was a late-night show hosted by Jack Miller, a warm, soothing voice that comforted the lonely, the sleepless, and the broken-hearted. Every night, Jack ended his show with the same familiar line: "Don't worry, you're never alone. No matter where you are, someone's always listening." But one cold December night, Jack received a call unlike any other. The signal cracked with static, faint wind sounds mixed with radio noise, and then came a trembling woman's voice. "Jack, are you still there?" Jack frowned. "I'm here, ma'am. What's your name?" A long silence. Then she whispered, "It's Sarah. Don't you remember me?" Jack froze. Sarah was his ex-girlfriend. She had died in a car crash 10 years ago. At first, Jack thought it was a cruel prank, but the voice on the line continued, filled with pain and sorrow, echoing through the static as if from a faraway place. "You once said you'd always listen to me, no matter what, no matter where." Jack tried to steady his breath. "This is WNRC 103.6. If this is some kind of joke—" "Jack," she interrupted softly, "you shouldn't be there. They're coming." Then the line went dead. Only static remained, like the sound of someone breathing behind a closed door. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. Sarah's voice kept replaying in his mind. Too real, too familiar, too alive. The next morning, he decided to trace the call, but the recording showed something impossible. The signal hadn't come from any phone line in the area. It came from the old WNRC studio, the one abandoned after the fire in 1988. Jack's blood ran cold. He was broadcasting from the new building, 10 miles away. So who or what was transmitting from the dead station? The next night, Jack drove out to the ruins of the old studio, bringing a recorder and a flashlight. The metal doors were rusted shut. The wind moaned through the cracks, sounding like distant cries. Inside, dust covered everything: the mixing board, the chair, the microphone. Yet everything looked untouched, frozen in time. And on the desk, the microphone light was still on. Jack's heart pounded. He turned on his recorder. "This is Jack Miller. Is anyone here?" No response, only soft static. Then, through the speaker, a voice echoed, his own voice. "Don't worry. You're never alone. No matter where you are, someone's always listening." Jack's face went pale. It was his voice, his sign-off line, but he had never recorded anything in this building. The lights flickered and went out. In the darkness, a woman's voice whispered behind him, trembling, "Jack, you're too late." Jack spun around. No one there, but on the wall behind him, in the beam of his flashlight, was a charred silhouette of a person, one hand pressed flat against the surface, as if trying to break free. From the speaker came a distorted laugh, his own voice looping endlessly. "No matter where you are, someone's always listening." Jack fled the building, but the echo followed him down the empty street. Someone's always listening. 3 days later, Jack's car was found parked outside the old station. He was gone. Inside, the recorder was still running, filled only with the sound of wind and a faint male whisper. "This is WNRC 103.6, the night voice. I'm Jack Miller, and I'm still listening." Then, silence. Ever since that night, every year on December 12th, the frequency, 103.6 FM, picks up a short, static-filled signal, lasting exactly 3 minutes. And within that static, listeners still swear they can hear a deep, raspy voice repeating, "No matter where you are, someone's always listening." Episode 3. The School with No Students. In the foggy outskirts of Pennsylvania, deep within a forest of bare trees, stood the remains of Riverside Elementary School. It had been abandoned for over 20 years, yet the locals swore one thing was still true. Every night at 8:15 p.m., the school bell still rang. In the fall of 2004, 3 college students, Emma, Jason, and Claire, decided to make a short documentary there. They wanted to debunk the legend, to prove that ghosts and curses were nothing more than superstition. By the time they arrived, the sun had already sunk behind the forest. The gate creaked open with a long, hollow screech, like a warning they didn't understand. Inside, classrooms stood frozen in time. Desks and chairs were still in neat rows, covered in dust. The chalkboard was cracked but untouched. On the teacher's desk lay a class register, its pages yellowed with age. Claire flipped to the last page, and her hand trembled. Written in shaky red ink were the words, "All students have left, except one." Emma laughed nervously, thinking it was some prank left by another explorer. But Jason noticed something that made his skin crawl. The clock on the wall was still ticking. Tock, tock, tock. Then it stopped. The time read 8:15, and that's when the bell rang. The sharp clang echoed through the empty corridors. Every classroom door swung open at once. A cold gust of air blew through, carrying the faint scent of chalk and old paper. On the board in the nearest room, white chalk began to move, writing words by itself. "Class 3B, line up." Claire lifted her camera with shaking hands. Through the lens, she saw them. Dozens of pale, translucent children standing quietly in rows. Their uniforms were tattered, faces hidden in shadow, heads bowed as if waiting for attendance. Emma whispered, "This can't be real." She stepped closer to one of the desks, and then, right beside her ear, came a child's whisper. "Teacher, are you calling our names today?" They screamed and bolted down the hallway, but when they reached the front doors, they were locked tight. Behind them came the sound of small, synchronized footsteps. Clack, clack, clack. Dozens of tiny feet walking closer. Jason turned with the flashlight and froze. At the end of the hall stood a woman. She wore an old, faded dress, her long black hair hiding her face. In her hands was the same class register they had found earlier. Her voice cracked as she read aloud. 3 students absent. Emma, Jason, Claire. Jason threw the camera toward her, and the footage ended there, with the final frame showing all 3 being dragged into the darkness, their screams drowned by the relentless ringing of the school bell. A week later, police found the student's car parked outside Riverside. The camera was still inside, battery dead. When investigators replayed the footage after restoring it, the last minute captured only children's laughter and a woman's calm, distant voice saying, "Settle down, children. Class is about to begin." To this day, the Riverside building still stands, and every night, at exactly 8:15 p.m., the bell tolls once again. Those who linger outside the fence claim they can still hear faint voices inside, the echo of children reciting, in unison, "Teacher, I'm still here." Episode 4, Room 313. In the heart of New Orleans, hidden among moss-covered oaks and narrow cobblestone streets, stood an old hotel known as Hotel Delacroix. Elegant, historic, haunted. The locals whispered about Room 313, the room no guest stayed in twice. Some said they heard knocks at midnight. Others claimed they saw faces in the mirrors, or a woman crying softly at the end of the hall. The manager, Mr. Robert, warned every new employee, "If someone asks for 313, tell them it's under renovation. And whatever happens, never open that door." One stormy night, a young journalist named Anna arrived, drenched from the rain. The hotel was full, every room booked for a festival in town. After some pleading, Robert reluctantly handed her the key to 313, just for one night. "The door sticks sometimes," he said quietly. "And if you hear knocking after midnight, don't answer." Anna smiled. "Superstitions don't scare me, Mr. Robert." He didn't smile back. Room 313 was at the end of a long, dim hallway. It smelled faintly of mildew and perfume, a scent that felt old. The wallpaper peeled like dry skin, and the air was heavy, as if the room itself had been waiting too long. Anna set down her bags, turned on her laptop, and began typing her article. Then, at exactly 12:03 a.m., came a soft knock. Knock, knock, knock. She frowned. "Hello? Who is it?" Silence. She looked through the peephole. No one. Shrugging, she sat back down. But then she heard it again. Not from the door this time. From behind her. Anna turned. The window was wide open, curtains thrashing in the wind, even though the rain had stopped. In the mirror above the desk, she saw a woman standing behind her. Soaked hair clung to a pale face, eyes black and hollow, a hand reaching out. Anna spun around. No one there. Her breath caught as she noticed something on the wall, a wet handprint dripping down slowly. She grabbed her phone to call the front desk. No answer. Then the screen flickered. An incoming call. Room 313. The next morning, housekeeping knocked on her door. No reply. When they opened it, the room was silent. The bed was made, her bags untouched. On the desk sat her open laptop, the cursor blinking at the end of an unfinished sentence. It's past midnight. Someone's knocking again. There were no signs of a struggle, only a small puddle of water beneath the bed. Police later searched the hotel archives. They discovered that in 1927, a woman named Eliza Moore had drowned in the bathtub of room 313. When they found her, the water was still running, and she was staring into the mirror, her reflection smiling back. Since that night, every guest who stayed in room 313 disappeared. No one ever checked out. Hotel Delacroix is still open today. Room 313 remains locked. Yet sometimes, in the quiet hours after midnight, guests on the third floor say they hear 3 soft knocks at the end of the hallway. And if you dare to stand by that door long enough, they say you'll hear a voice whisper through the wood. "Hello, can I stay with you tonight?" Episode 5. The Caretaker of Midnight Grove. In the desolate countryside of Kentucky lies an ancient graveyard known as Midnight Grove. A place where the grass never dies and the wind whispers like the voices of the dead. Locals know one rule: never pass by after midnight, because if you hear the sound of a shovel scraping the earth, it isn't the wind, it's the gravekeeper at work. And the horrifying part is, he's been dead for over 40 years. Back in 1979, the caretaker of Midnight Grove was a man named Thomas Gray. He lived alone in a small cabin beside the gate, devoted entirely to maintaining every grave. Thomas was kind, but he had one disturbing habit. Every night at exactly midnight, he would patrol the cemetery with an oil lantern and his old shovel. He often told villagers, "The dead never sleep if we abandon them." But one freezing winter night, Thomas vanished. The next morning, people found his lantern still burning among the tombstones, and his shovel was buried deep in the soil, covered in blood. From that day on, no one dared to take his place. Decades later, in 2015, a college student named David decided to make a documentary for his folklore project. He chose Midnight Grove, ignoring all the warnings. On his first night filming, the sky was black. No stars, no moon. The wind moaned through cracked headstones. At midnight, David turned on his camera. Then came a faint sound. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Like metal cutting through earth. He swung his flashlight around. No one there. Only freshly disturbed soil, forming a trail between the graves. David followed it. The sound grew louder, and then he saw a man, hunched over a grave, shovel in hand, a dim lantern glowing beside him. David stammered, "Sir, who are you?" The man looked up. His eyes were hollow, skin ashen, and his voice echoed like it came from underground. "I'm just putting the restless ones back to sleep." Then he pointed to David's camera. "But tonight, I've got a new one to bury." The next morning, police found David's tent near the cemetery fence, but he was gone. His camera lay neatly on a grave, battery drained. In the final footage, David was seen running in terror, screaming. Then the camera dropped to the ground. Before the screen went black, a dirt-covered hand reached out and dragged him down, followed by the steady, rhythmic sound of a shovel digging. To this day, Midnight Grove has no caretaker, but those who pass by at midnight swear they still hear the faint sound of digging, and sometimes a flickering oil lantern glowing among the graves. A few brave souls once called out into the dark, and they swear they heard a rough, ghostly voice reply, "There's an empty grave tonight. Shall I dig it for you?" Episode 6: The Radio of the Dead. On the outskirts of Ohio stood a tiny antique shop called Old Melody, known for its eerie collection of vintage sound equipment, gramophones, wooden speakers, cassette players, and dusty vinyl records. The owner, an elderly woman named Margaret, lived alone and rarely spoke. Locals said her shop was strange, that sometimes after closing hours, faint music could still be heard playing inside, even though the power had been cut for years. One rainy afternoon, a music student named Ethan wandered in. He was working on a project about lost sounds, recreating the voices and noises of old recording devices. In the far corner of the shop, half hidden beneath a sheet, he found a 1950s-style radio. It was coated in dust, but the tuning dial still gave off a dim, flickering light, even though the plug hung loose from the socket. Ethan asked, half joking, "Does this old thing still work?" Margaret looked at him, her eyes tired and distant. "It works," she whispered, "but it doesn't play music. It plays the voices of those who never left." Ethan smiled nervously, thinking it was just a ghost story for tourists. But when he touched the radio, the metal felt freezing cold, like something that had been buried underground. That night, unable to resist curiosity, Ethan set the radio on his desk and pressed the power button. The time was 2:13 a.m. At first, just static. Then, a trembling male voice came through the speaker. "If anyone can hear this, please tell them I'm still here." Ethan froze. The voice was faint, distorted, almost begging. He adjusted the dial, trying to find the source, but the station numbers didn't respond normally. Each time he turned the knob, a different sound emerged. A woman sobbing, a child softly humming, a low, hollow breathing that didn't sound human. Then the radio began to tune itself. The dial spun wildly until it stopped at one frequency, 666 kilohertz. The voice that came next made Ethan's heart stop. It was his own. "If anyone can hear this, please tell them I'm still here." He stumbled backward, trembling. He hadn't recorded anything. How could it be his voice? Then another voice came through, a man's deep, broken whisper. "You shouldn't have taken it. It remembers its owner." The room grew cold. From the speaker came 3 loud knocks. Bang, 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 as if someone was knocking from inside the radio. Ethan turned toward his window, and saw a figure standing outside, head tilted, as though listening closely to the sound. The next morning, Ethan's roommate returned. The radio was still on, softly humming static. But Ethan was gone. On his desk lay a half-burned notebook. The final line, scrawled in frantic handwriting, read, "They never leave the frequency. They only wait for someone to turn it on again." A week later, Margaret passed away, and Old Melody closed its doors for good. But locals say if you walk by the shop at night, you can still hear faint music playing from inside, an old tune, warped and echoing through time. And if you dare to step closer to the dusty window, you might hear a voice whisper from the shadows, "Welcome to the frequency of the dead." Episode 7, The Ghost of Highway 94. In the desolate deserts of Arizona, there's a stretch of road that cuts straight through miles of empty sand. Highway 94. By day, it's just another lonely highway shimmering under the sun. But after nightfall, truckers call it the Road of Voices. Because if you drive it alone past midnight, you might hear someone calling your name, even when there's no one around. In 1998, a long-haul truck driver named Jack Turner recorded something that no one believed could happen. Jack wasn't a man who scared easily. He'd crossed every highway from Texas to Nevada. But that night, as a dust storm swept across Highway 94, he would learn that some roads don't lead anywhere, except back to the dead. It was 12:17 a.m. when he first saw her, a young woman standing in the middle of the road, hair whipping in the wind, her white dress streaked with red dust. Jack slammed on the brakes. The truck screeched to a stop just a few feet away. He threw open the door and shouted, "Hey, you okay?" The girl didn't answer. She just lifted her arm and pointed toward the endless dark ahead. Then, in a voice as fragile as the wind, she whispered, "Can you take me home?" Jack felt a chill crawl down his spine. Strange, since the desert air was scorching hot. He blinked once, turned to open the passenger door, and she was gone. Only a trail of small footprints remained in the dust, leading toward the back of his truck. Heart pounding, Jack jumped back into the cab. He glanced in the rearview mirror. The girl was sitting in the back seat, her head tilted, her eyes fixed right on him. "Who are you?" he yelled. She didn't answer, only whispered, "You've gone too far. You shouldn't have stopped." Jack hit the gas, desperate to leave her behind. But the road didn't end. No signs, no exits, no lights. Just the same endless stretch of desert. Then the radio flickered to life, even though he hadn't turned it on. A calm female voice came through, reciting an old news report. On Highway 94, a tragic accident occurred in 1973. A young woman was left behind in the desert. Her body was never found. Jack froze. He turned around. The seat was empty. Then, suddenly, the engine died. The lights went out. In the mirror, she was there again. Only this time her face was torn, her dress soaked in blood, her smile twisted. "Thank you for stopping," she whispered. "Now it's your turn to take me home." At dawn, the police found Jack's truck abandoned on Highway 94. The engine was still warm. The driver's door was wide open. No sign of Jack. Only bloody handprints on the steering wheel and a cassette tape inside the radio. When they played it, Jack's trembling voice echoed through the static. "If anyone hears this, don't stop the car. She's still out there." To this day, truckers say if you drive down Highway 94 after midnight, you might see a young woman in a white dress, standing by the roadside, waving for help. Some slow down, some stop, and none of them ever make it to the next town. Episode 8. The House at the End of Hollow Creek. The small town of Hollow Creek, Pennsylvania was once a peaceful place, until the house at the end of Maple Street had been abandoned for nearly 40 years. Locals called it the house that never sleeps, because even though its windows were boarded shut, people swore they could still hear footsteps, chairs scraping across the floor, and faint laughter coming from inside. No one dared go near it, except for one person, Olivia Barnes, an architecture student working on her thesis titled Haunted Houses of America. Olivia arrived in Hollow Creek one foggy autumn afternoon. The mist hung low, swallowing the narrow streets. The owner of the small inn where she stayed gave her a warning. If you hear someone calling your name at midnight, don't answer. That house, it likes to talk to strangers. Olivia smiled politely. She didn't believe in ghosts. She only believed in what could be seen, recorded, and explained. Armed with a camera and a voice recorder, she entered the house at 5 p.m. The last rays of sunlight slipped through the cracked window, scattering across the dusty wooden floor. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and rust, as if the house itself was breathing. In the living room, a small rocking chair moved gently, though there was no wind. On the wall hung a photograph of a family of 4, a father, a mother, and 2 children. The mother's face had been torn in half. Olivia placed her recorder on the table and pressed record. The time on the screen read 17:34. As she snapped pictures of the staircase, the recorder crackled softly. Then a faint woman's voice whispered, "Leave now, before they come home." She spun around. No one was there. Thinking it was just interference, she replayed the recording and heard the same whisper clearly, followed by another, deeper voice. "We're still here." Night fell. Olivia sat in the living room, flashlight in hand, waiting for something, anything, to happen. The clock ticked past midnight. Then came the sound. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy, deliberate footsteps descending from upstairs. Her heart pounded. "Hello? Is someone there?" she called out. No answer. From the hallway, a small figure appeared. A little girl with tangled hair, clutching a worn-out doll. She looked up at Olivia and said softly, "Mom's looking for you." Olivia froze. "Where's your mom?" she whispered. The girl smiled faintly and pointed behind her. Olivia turned. Standing in the middle of the living room was the woman from the torn photograph, her face shredded, one eye pure white, blood trickling from her mouth. Her voice rose, echoing as though from beneath the floorboards. "Why did you come into my house?" Olivia screamed and bolted for the front door, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked from the outside. Laughter erupted around her, mingling with the creaking of the rocking chair. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the woman's ghostly hand reaching out, icy cold, touching her face. The next morning, police responded to a call about a woman found unconscious on the porch of the old house. They discovered Olivia Barnes alive, but in shock, unable to speak a single word. A recorder was still running. The final words captured were Olivia's own trembling voice. "I'm not going back inside, because now they're inside me." The house on Maple Street was sealed off after that. Yet, every year on October 12th, the townsfolk of Hollow Creek say the lights flicker inside that old house again, and the sound of a rocking chair creaks faintly through the fog. Some who've dared to listen from the gate claim they've heard a woman's voice whisper through the cracks of the door. Welcome home, my child. Episode 9. The House in the Fog. Early that morning, before the sun could pierce through the thick fog blanketing the village, Sarah and Emily decided to return to the old house. They had left behind the journal, the one they believed might hold the final truth about the Holloway family and the darkness that haunted this place. The road leading to the house twisted through the mist like a living thing. The deeper they went, the colder it grew, and every step they took seemed to echo into a void. When the old wooden door creaked open, a chill burst from within, carrying the scent of mold and something metallic, something like blood. Inside, everything was as they had left it that dreadful night, except for one detail. The mirror in the living room was cracked wide open, and within that crack, a pair of eyes seemed to be watching them. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She forced herself forward, reaching for the journal resting on the dusty table. But when she flipped to the last page, new words had appeared, written in fresh, red ink. They never left. And now neither will you, Emily screamed as footsteps echoed from the staircase above. They turned, and there, at the top of the stairs, stood a figure, thin, dressed in a tattered white gown. Long hair hung over her face like a veil. Slowly she lifted her head, revealing a face cracked like porcelain and eyes black as ink. Sarah grabbed her sister's hand. They backed away, but the door behind them slammed shut. Whispers filled the air, the cries of children, a man's laughter, and the shuffling of unseen feet drawing closer from every direction. Trembling, Sarah turned another page of the journal. A folded piece of paper fell to the floor. On it, a single sentence was scrawled. To leave this place, you must return what was taken. Emily stammered, her voice shaking. What did we take? Sarah's eyes darted around the room, until they froze on a framed photograph hanging crookedly on the wall. It showed a family, a mother, a father, and 2 little girls. The 2 children looked exactly like Sarah and Emily when they were young. A soft knock echoed behind them. They turned. The woman in white was closer now, just a few feet away, her hand reaching out, nails long and black as ash. Sarah screamed, grabbed the photograph, and hurled it to the ground. At once, the candle on the table went out, and darkness swallowed the entire room. The whispers stopped. Fog began to seep through the cracks in the walls, swirling thick and heavy until it consumed everything. When Sarah opened her eyes, she was standing in the middle of the village road beside Emily. Behind them, the old house had vanished, replaced by a crumbling ruin, covered in moss, as if it had been abandoned for decades. Emily's voice trembled. Sarah, what just happened? Sarah said nothing. She only looked down at her hands, still clutching the journal. The title on the cover, The Holloway House, had been erased. In its place, 2 names were written in shaky handwriting, Sarah and Emily.